Um, uh, Happy birthday to our colleague, Mr. Larson. Proof that the aviation subcommittee really is the secret to staying forever young. Mr. Rinaldi, I appreciate the kind words on the bipartisan legislation that my colleague, Mr. Cabello, and I have introduced to address some of the issues you've been discussing this morning. H.R. 5292, known as the Air Traffic Control Hiring Improvement Act. You've done a better job in your testimony than I could of outlining some of the merits of the legislation. But I would, but I'd love to ask you about a couple of issues that are covered by our bipartisan legislation, as I'm sure my colleague Mr. Cabello may as well. And let me also say thank you to your members at NATCA for the extraordinary work they do day in and day out that ensure millions of us who travel every year and every week, in many cases, arrive at our destinations safe and sound. So thank you for that. And thank you for your efforts in advancing my legislation. But let me focus you specifically on the new biographical assessment test conducted by FAA. Could you speak to some of the ways that this test has led to qualified controllers, including veterans, being rejected from potential ATC positions? I'm not sure people fully understand this, this issue.
Well, thank you, sir, and thank you for your leadership on H.R. 5292. We do really appreciate it. We think it's the right piece of legislation to move forward to help us with the hiring. The biographical assessment was established to help cull a list, basically, of 28,000 applicants, and it didn't take into account, regardless of any schooling you would have, or any actual on-the-job function of it being an air traffic controller you've been doing for years in the military or years in the FAA, and really just put everybody into one pool. And I don't know how they graded it. I do know some people that did take the test, they were just told if they passed or failed, weren't told what they answered correctly or incorrectly. And it really seemed, it doesn't seem like a fairness issue. Like I started to say earlier, I pay for 2 college tuitions, and I would like to know if my child can actually do the job before I'm actually paying for the college tuition, especially something as precise and specific as air traffic control. You can't come out of Embry-Riddle with an air traffic control degree and then fail a BQ, and there's not many other places you can turn to. So it's a fairness issue of allowing CTI students not to be lumped in with off the street. Same as military that are actually providing day-to-day air traffic control services in the military, to actually then put them and treat them and put them into the biographical questionnaire seems silly.
Thank you. And if you'd also expound on how it unnecessarily restricts military and Department of Defense civilian controllers, and if that's contributing to the staffing crisis we've heard quite a bit about this morning and that we're seeing in places like New York.
Well, to be an air traffic controller in our large TRACONs is a very, very hard task. You really can't come out of the academy and make it into one of those busy facilities. The success rate is very, very low. Depending on what your job function is in the military, if you're actually a tower controller, you're probably best suited to go into a tower environment in the FAA. If you're a range controller, you're probably best to go into the academy and learn exactly air traffic control in civilian world. But really what it comes down to for New York TRACON, Atlanta TRACON, Dallas TRACON, Chicago TRACON, and the other busy TRACONs, we need to move controllers through the mid-level facilities, and that's what the ERR process does do. It gives us the ability to place appropriately at an academy into the lower level facilities where you can develop and hone skills so that you can actually make it into the big leagues. Very similar to a farm system, not to simplify it, but what we would do in the major leagues in baseball, A, AA, AAA, and then majors.
And in the time I have remaining, I'd also appreciate if you'd just say a word about how allowing FAA to directly notice ATC vacancies to historically black colleges, Hispanic-serving institutions, and other minority-serving institutions would help ensure that we are promoting a diverse workforce among air traffic controllers while working on the staffing shortages.
Well, we truly believe in having a very diverse workforce. I think that you get the best workforce if you reach from all areas of our community. But I think that there's a way to do that with HR 5292 because you can hire directly out of the military, which is very diverse. You can hire from the CTI students, and you could still do off the street hiring. You can have a three-way track to make sure you're making your mark at the FAA Academy each time, and you could use the BQ to call a list of someone who has no experience.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Farenthold.